Welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's the Monday Bulletin, and I'm joined by Amy Canavan and Russell Boyce. How are you? Good weekend?
Yes, mate.
I know you did. Russell.
Exactly. Russell had a great one, didn't he?
He certainly did. Bouncing about with the superstars of the musical world on the Friday, and then a bit of the old Celtic celebrity on the Saturday. Was it Saturday?
Yes.
We'll talk all about that. We need to have a look at where we are, because we're currently still in an international break. There's another game in the midst. Amy Canavan, as a media journalism student, you are someone who covers the international game for the state of Scottish football. Now, I've been asking the contributors when it comes to international football. I've got to say, I've always got one eye on Celtic. I'm hoping our players don't get injured. I just want us to get back to the football. But we do have another game coming up. So the first question I'm going to ask about that is, obviously there were some call-offs, as there always is with the international game, one of whom was Nathan Patterson. And I just thought, well, there is a natural replacement there. And a right-back who's been on very, very good form this season, and Tony Ralston. Get him into the squad. Surely the time is now. Were you surprised, Amy, that Tony Ralston wasn't called up by Stevie Clarke?
I wasn't, to be honest with you. It's a massive game tomorrow, and I just didn't really see him calling up somebody that he's never really worked with before. I think if he wanted Ralston, he'd have called him up from the off. So I understand now. Well, I'm not jumping in with joy that it is Paul McGinn who's obviously been called up, but it's somebody that Clark's worked with before. There's no doubt Stephen O'Donnell will start tomorrow night. That's just a shoe-in. And McGinn is just purely there as backup. So I think the fact that it's just a one game tomorrow, it's one massive game, and he's only going to have one day really. He needs somebody coming in who he is comfortable with, and that is McGinn. There's could have been Tony Ralston, could have been Calvin Ramsey. Some were even saying Sean Rooney from St Johnstone. So all these names are getting touted around, and I think over time, Ralston, if he keeps his form up, there's no denying that he should be in that Scotland setup. And Calvin Ramsey's definitely going to be a stalwart for the future. He's been really impressive since breaking into the Aberdeen side. Sean Rooney as well, it's a tough one, because I think St Johnstone's are going to struggle now, I really do. But he loves a goal at Hampden, so maybe get him in a few games time. But on the basis of the fact that it's a one game shoot off fundamentally, and he's got one day really to work with him, I'm not really surprised it's Paul McGinn. Now,
you mentioned St Johnstone there. And I'm going to have to ask a question. Were you surprised that Celtic weren't interested in Ali McCann? We've had discussions on the podcast, Amy, around our midfield situation, and we will be talking about that as the show progresses. But there you have a player there, and yes, I understand he wanted to go down to England, but when you're talking about a fee of £1.25 million, obviously Celtic could have got themselves in the driving seat in terms of the deal there. Were you surprised that we didn't show any interest in that player?
I am a bit. I'd have been more than happy for Celtic to try and go for Ali McCann. I think he's a really talented player, and we speak about so much that why aren't Celtic looking like in their own backyard in the Scottish Premiership? Wouldn't have even been too disappointed even looking likes of Jason Kerr as well. I think there was a few other Scottish Premiership sides definitely looking for him, but again he favoured the move down south. But Ali McCann's made it perfectly clear that is where he wanted to go, hence why it was left so last minute. But it's another one who sort of slipped through the fingers, and from a Scottish perspective, he has as well, because he represents Northern Ireland. So it's all these little bits and bobs that it's just disappointing, but I'm sure he's going to go on to have a fantastic career, Preston North End, and I can see him just getting higher and higher as he gets older. He's only 21, which is quite outstanding.
I just always get this fear now after the John McGinn saga that every time a young Scottish player goes down south for I'm not going to say a nominal fee, but I mean £1.25 million, it might come back to haunt you when you could have quite early got in there and got the deal done. What's your thoughts, Russell Boyce, on Tony Ralston? And by the way, before I come to you, can I just say Amy had been bigging up Tony Ralston, and we've got to dig out that footage from as far back as when was it?
Tweets. I actually found tweets this morning. I did. Yeah. I'm convinced it's on a pod as well. You did mention it. I found the tweets this morning.
When was that? Was it quite early in the year?
Give me a minute, I'll go and find it. I think it's February. I think it's
February time.
I'd done a post when we signed John Joe Kenny, and it's in the comments to that I found the tweets that I've said, like, why don't give Ralston a crack of the whip.
Well, there you go. You cannot deny, and you did say it on the podcast, and I'm pretty sure you'd have been ridiculed for saying it as well, Amy, but, it's come home to roost. What's your thoughts, Boyce? I mean, I've been a big critic of some of our international managers for going with the tried and tested. I mean, I understand that Amy's explained it there. He's going to go with someone that he knows. I don't always think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, obviously as well, when, was it Paul McGinn? Is that his first name? Paul McGinn that's been called up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's 31 years old. He's never going to, cement a regular starting role for Scotland. It's not a great experience. Obviously, it's a good experience for him, but it's not one that's maybe necessarily needed as a young player. Even if they're not going to play, just being involved in the international setup can help. Mm-hmm. I think Ralston's on the crest of a wave right now. That would have been like the icing on the cake. And you can't help but feel it is a wee bit of it's a dull one. It's a strange one. And let's be honest, I think Ralston's a better player as well, to be frank about it. So I don't really get the thinking behind that. And if it is, because he's worked with them in the past and all that, then I find that a wee bit lazy, shall we say, at times as well. I don't see many benefits to it. Nothing against Paul McGinn, of course, but to me, Ralston was the guy on form right now, doing it at a high level as well. We've seen a mixed bag from, even his European performances as well as domestically. He was arguably our best player against Rangers as well. So why not, reward that when there is a space freed up? Okay, you didn't put him in the initial squad. I think that's Steve Clarke's prerogative. When the space opens up and you're giving it to a 31-year-old, instead of Tony Ralston at 22, who's buzzing as it is, I just think that was a missed opportunity, really.
I think so as well, and we'll see how that develops. If he indeed remains on this form and remains in the Celtic team, we will be talking about that wee dilemma, which is a good dilemma for Ange Postecoglou to face. Coming up to the game against Ross County, there are loads of comments coming in. Thanks for tuning in on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, at Twitter as well. And we've got a first comment coming in, aka Alan Boyne. Carter, Vickers and Jota should start against Ross County, and we will be talking about that. Johnny Ryan comes in, he agrees with Carter Vickers, but also thinks Giakoumakis and Scales should start. The boy Scales is getting loads of support in the comment section, and I'd love to see that one working out for him as well. But when we're talking about Ralston, we've got to talk about Juranovic. He comes in for his first game against Rangers, out of position, Amy, away from home, in a cauldron, because obviously there's no Celtic fans at that game. He performs very, very well, but Tony Ralston is the number 2. It's all about squad management, no. And I'm looking at who will start, who will be introduced to the Celtic side in an environment where you're playing at home. We know that we've won both our home games domestically 6-0. We're up against Ross County. I'm not going to say it's a safe bet and a guaranteed win, but it's a type of game that if you're going to introduce a new player into the team, it's a good opportunity to do it. Is Juranovic that man? Is he going to start that game, do you think?
I can see Juranovic starting, but like we say, out of position, because Tony Ralston's undroppable right now, and I think that's going to be the case for probably a lot of the team. I don't see that Ange, even after this international break and after making those deadline day signings, I don't expect there to be too many rotations, and that's what I'd call it. Not about dropping or anything like that, but it would be rotations, because that's that little bit of continuity needing. Europa League's just around the corner. It comes thick and fast now. That's only on the 16th, so that's next Thursday. So I think, as much as we can say it's Ross County and what previous results have been, I think an eye will be on Thursday night as well. So continuity will have to be there, and I think that's where a lot of the team selections all came from. We're talking about Ralston obviously not being selected for Scotland. He's had a little rest, so there's no way that he's going to be wanting rotated. He's not going to be needing any more time off. He'll be raring to go right back into that Celtic side. So I don't expect too many changes. So I expect Juranovic to be on the left again, as it was against Rangers, because I think he done okay. I know a lot of people were saying that it was, quite phenomenal and whatnot, but I think we need to be a little bit reserved. I think he slowed play up a little bit, but not through any real fault of his own. I think it was just, he was on the wrong side, it was the wrong foot. So sometimes some of the attacking play was just a little bit slower and not quite so slick as we would like. But I would have him out there because I think right now he's the best option. Don't really know what's the script with Greg Taylor as well. But he certainly looks a player, and getting him game time is only going to be a good thing.
No, you're right. It's interesting what you said there, because Donny Boy echoes those sentiments. I'd be happy seeing them come off the bench so as not to spoil the rhythm of the team, Amy, saying that might be an ideal game to start a few. I think it is a good opportunity to get a few of them in. The question is who. I mean, you don't want to just throw them all in. CFC 67 would start Scales as well. It's interesting to see how many people are on the Liam Scales bus. Boys, say you driving it?
Oh yes, very much so. Liam Scales has a bus at the depot ready to go. I watched, again, I mean, everyone says, you can watch a YouTube montage or you can put one together even and make any player look like a worldie, but I like the cut of his jib. I think he's going to be no-nonsense, tough tackling. I think he'll bring a bit of ability as well. And I actually like the fact his track record's maybe not to be as dissed as, perhaps we can be guilty of, because he's coming from a league of less repute. This guy has been, even from left back, scoring goals in Europa League qualifiers, maybe even a Champions League qualifier. Won the League of Ireland as well. We hate when players leave the SPFL, such as Ali McCann at 1.2 million, because we know he's better than that. We've just spoke about him. Liam Scales may well be a case in point where the Irish football fans or the soccer fans over there may well be thinking, why have they let him go for so cheap? He's a far better player than that. They might be having the same debate. We've undervalued a player who'll cruise it in the SPFL. So for me, he gets a fair crack at the whip like everyone else. I think the fact he got number 5 as well suggests to me he's going to be very much in the mix. You don't just hand out such an iconic jersey when you think of Billy McNeil to a player if they're not in your first team thoughts. I don't think that will be the case. Quickly on the right back situation as well, I just think, whilst there's been negatives about the window, and I still would have liked to see Ange get back a wee bit more, but I think we expect to feel like that at the end of every window, don't we? That's just your divine right as a football fan. There doesn't need to be a negativity crusade. You always want a bit more.
We want more. Yes.
I know exactly what you're doing. No Gallagher, innit? But you've now got Anthony Ralston, we've just spoke about, should be getting called up for Scotland, or perhaps being considered at the very least. And we're discussing how he's in the form of his life, and we've now got a Croatian international who was outstanding against Scotland at the Euros, coming in to challenge for that place. We've just spoke about games coming thick and fast. Well, that looks to me like a perfect headache to be having right now, with whether it's rotation or whether you're just having a debate on who's in the best form. That looks like two very solid options to be having right now, and I think there's, you've got to kind of look at that and go, that position, by the development of Ralston and then the purchase of a Croatian international for $2.5 million, where were all these guys the last few windows, I may ask, but that's another question, another minefield. But you bring that in and you watch what Ange can do with a player like Ralston, and you go, now we've got two guys there in a position we thought we were really struggling for at the start of the season, let's be honest.
Yeah, no, you're right. And as I was said before, it's a really nice dilemma for the gaffer to have. Now, here's a wee point being raised by a couple of the viewers. Bruce FM, who's disliking before the broadcast even started? If you don't like ACSOM in general, don't tune in. But this is what you're up against, Bruce. And Donny Boy also comes in with the same point. You are up against trolls who don't necessarily dislike what it is we're actually doing. That was just a wee fly there. I was trying to catch that, Mr. Miyagi style.
I thought it was part of your speech.
I was just getting very animated. But they want to give you the thumbs down before you even kick a ball, before you even come on. That's just the way it seems to work. So they can't be criticising the content because they don't even know what the content is going to consist of. So what I would say to combat that, everybody who's tuning in, give it a big thumbs up on YouTube. And just drown out the noise, because you know what? There's far more people get involved with ACSOM and enjoy what we're doing than the haters. And I've taken a decision just to focus on the people that enjoy it and appreciate it, Amy. And I take more time dealing with all the people that come on social media saying great show, and I ignore all the rest. I used to have a wee mad half hour maybe once a day where I would get into wee spats here and there. Sometimes it was you, Amy, that started it, but now I just focus on the positive. But that's what you've got to do online, isn't it? Because there's too much negativity.
Yeah, that was me, that one. I'm quite a big fan of seeing you go off on a wee rant. It's quite funny. You can always see when he's in some sort of mood, because it just is like a half-hour spat, isn't it? And then it's like Paul's off on one. No, it's the way to go forward. Of course it is. There's a lot more positivity out there than not. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to find. We've been flooded a lot recently by perhaps some comments that we wouldn't especially want to be receiving, but you know, the good always outweighs the bad, and we'll always highlight that and listen to that a lot more than anything else.
I have a theory on it, Paul.
Right, I want to hear theory, right? I want to hear your theory. Let's go.
I've run it past you before. Too many people argue the person and not the point. Too many folk want to have pops at me being Owen Wilson, Rhys Evans, Wuzzle Gummidge is one that always makes me laugh the most. They're not actually listening to what the content is you're saying. If someone's able to thumbs down ACSOM before a ball's been kicked today, then they are arguing with the people, not the points that are getting raised. If anyone wants to talk about the football, I'm all for it.
No, you're spot on. And it was interesting yesterday. Don't ask me how this happened, but I did go down a wee rabbit hole, and I read online, and it was actually typed as fact that I actually wear a wig. Now, that was something that I think started off as a joke, but now it's true.
Yeah.
So don't believe everything you read out there, because I certainly don't wear a wee syrup. Feed the bear. I bought my ACSOM shirt. Yeah, I got the alert email this morning. That will be winging its way to you, and I hope we get pictures of you wearing the ACSOM top. Afternoon from Belfast, Paddy Lavery. Well done. Afternoon to you, sir, and William Peden, who is watching in Dubai. Always love to tap in with all our fans all over the place. It's tremendous. Before we move on to other matters, Amy, on the subject of international football, we've spoken about Ralston. When I'm looking at the fact that there was no Celtic starters against Moldova, there were 4 ex-Celts, 2 Celtic players on the bench. I've got to ask, when you're looking at that team, is the first thing you think of is that you're surprised at the omissions of McGregor and Turnbull? Or as a Celtic fan, do you tend to say, well, I'm kind of glad they're getting a rest and they're not going to get injured? Are we selfish in that way? Because I must say, I'm much more of the latter. Really,
I'm not. No, I want the best players playing for my country. And I think Callum McGregor certainly should be in any starting lineup. I think he was one of our better players during the Euros. That's not really that hard to go by, to be honest. It wasn't a very high bar. But McGregor was played in the wrong position, obviously, against Denmark last week. I highlighted that. How many times have we seen him out on that left wing? That's not where he's at his most influential. But there became quite a lot of backlash last week, and it came in the comments as well when we were broadcasting that Billy Gilmour and Callum McGregor can't play on the same side because they're too similar. And that just makes the mind boggle for me. You're looking at influential players and you're wanting your best players on the park. Now, if we can shoehorn in our 2 best players in Tierney and Robertson, and we can shoehorn in anybody else, and McGregor and Gilmour are not the same. McGregor's much more comfortable being at that back, as we all described, quarterback, number 6, and Billy Gilmour obviously played that the other night. There's been a lot of praise for him. I did think he played well, but I don't think it was as outstanding as maybe everyone else is sort of, pushing along. If it was, if he missed the chance that if Ryan Christie missed the chance that Gilmour missed, then, Pelters would have been, well, rightly deserved. Christie did miss his own, quite shockingly, to be honest. But I do find it strange that Callum McGregor can't make the Scotland side. He obviously came on, didn't have a lot of time to make any sort of impact. And then when you look at David Turnbull, he's been given 10 minutes at the end, I think, each match to try and come on and, make an impact in the game. That's just not going to happen. You've got to give the guy time. Kenny McLean comes on before him, and I appreciate, obviously, Kenny McLean plays in the Premier League with Norwich. He's not always a starter. And I find that if you're comparing the two, I find that it's a strange one to be opting with McLean. But there's lots of theories out there. There's definitely, Clark does have his loyalties, and that's fine. That's great. You need to have players that he's comfortable with, hence the Paul McGinn inclusion again today. But I think Kenny McLean getting in ahead of David Turnbull is just an odd move. And I don't think that's a bias. I think that's just, having a decent breadth of football knowledge and having a real interest in Scotland, that I think many would be picking David Turnbull ahead of Kenny McLean. But I get what you're saying, Cal Mack. Obviously, I think he only ended up playing 15-20 minutes, if that, against Moldova at the weekend, instead of having a full 90-minute run out. So he's had his rest now. As long as he's back in for the big game tomorrow, then that's all that matters.
Yeah, I mean, what's your take, Russell? I mean, I'm probably very selfish, and I've seen somebody coming in the comments saying club over country every time. Is that your take on it? Are you more inclined to agree with Amy?
I would like to think I was, I'd still held the Scottish team and like that, as just as important as Celtic. But the honest truth is I haven't watched either of the last two matches. So I suppose on that basis alone, and I think about it, obviously the level of importance to me, it's obviously not that important to me at all, let's be honest. I've not watched the last two matches. So it's unfortunate. I don't really like saying that, though. I'd like to be a wee bit patriotic and all that, but I don't know. I just find international weekends, I hate it when it's an international weekend. I'm always much prefer if it's a full calendar and you've got, whatever your preferred broadcaster is, whether the video printer or the scores coming down and all that. That's the weekend of football for me, you know what I mean? Because I work Saturdays, by the way. That's why I'm not at Celtic Park, Paul, as you know. But that to me is that's what Saturday football's all about. And I just think when it's international weekend, it's a bit of a damp squib for the old football.
Well, it's an argument that we could rage on about, I guess, Boise. But I think if we had a manager with a wee bit more kind of like of a modern outlook on the game and bleeding young, talented players in and exciting players into the team, it might help slightly. But Patrick Dolan makes a good point here, and I do agree with this. The most you can blood in at any one time is two new players. Be careful what you wish for. We've seen that in the past when managers are criticised for not using youth players or younger players, Amy. And we've seen them saying, well, I remember the infamous game at Celtic Park when Neil Lennon had been getting stick about not playing younger players. We played Morton in the Cup. He throws in just like a collection of players who had never played together, and we got beat. And that's exactly what happens. I just think it's a process. You've just got to put in one or two at a time and bleed them in to the team that way. And I think that's where my concern is, because so many players have come into the squad. Ange has his philosophy and his outlook on the game. And, it's going to take time, I guess, for them all to be on the same page. And it would concern me if we've seen that lineup and it was a lineup that is almost unrecognisable from the rhythm and the performances that we have seen up until now. So I think Patrick Dolan makes a really good point there. But one player who will be coming back into the team pretty soon is Christopher Jullien. Now, interestingly enough, it's been 9 months since Jullien has kicked a ball for Celtic. We know that he clashed with that the post against Dundee United, which was the last game of 2020. And I remember at that time, Boise, it was almost as if Celtic were almost getting back on track. We'd pulled a few results together, and we were thinking to ourselves, even when we're going into the Rangers game at the turn of the year at Ibrox, we might still be in with a shout. Then we get the Jullien injury, the defeat against Rangers, and then Dubai. And then the rest, as they say, is history. So it goes right back to that moment. So Jullien was part of that. He's now 28 years of age. He can only play centre-back. So he's not as adaptable as some of the players that were brought in, some of the players who are playing and can switch sides, etc. We signed him for over £7 million from Toulouse. He's now been at the club for 2.5 years, for just over 2 years, rather, and he's only played 61 games for Celtic. Now, how much of a miss do you think he's been? I mean, it was quite evident in the Champions League qualifiers. It was more evident than ever before just how big a miss he's been.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know there's the argument that when players are away, absence makes the heart grow fonder and all that, and there's a bit of revisionism goes on, and players are hyped up to be better than what they they perhaps actually were. I think in the case of Jullien, he's been a huge loss not to be in the team right now. And I feel that the influence he could have been having with the likes of a Stephen Welsh over the last 9-10 months, for all of Welsh's progress, by the way, it might even been further ahead than what he is now, having played with someone like Jullien. What I also like about Jullien is he gets it. He loves it at Celtic. You've never once read about, him looking for a move, him moaning about, settling in, adapting, or thinking he's worth being in a better league, or sulking. He doesn't seem like he's got any of those sorts of traits to him. He looks to me like someone I think we cheesed off. We didn't win 10 in a row, and we'll want to battle for that trophy back. I also have to think as well that the competition for places will be a good thing for him too. I think he'll embrace the fact that we've signed Carter Vickers from Tottenham with a bit of a reputation after a really successful spell at Bournemouth, obviously USA international, and then you've brought in a £4 million Swedish international as well. I happen to think that will suit Jullien, and that's probably the sort of competition for places he was probably used to at Toulouse. I mean, you think of Ligue 1 and all that, these clubs can all afford Celtic wages, certainly a lot of them can, So he was probably in serious battles for the jersey there, whereas, I know that he's only started 61 games. How many has he not played through a choice of personnel as opposed to injury? Very few. He's strolled into the team every week, and I actually think he will when he's placed back. But I think the competition, again, like we were saying about the right-back situation, has got healthier and stronger at centre-half, albeit Starfelt's maybe not hit the ground running as of yet, and maybe people are clinging to the Jullien thing because they're worried about the rocky start by Starfelt, but you don't get moves to the Russian Premier League from Sweden, and you don't get capped by Sweden, and he was called up again last week, and you don't, whoever it is at Celtic that scouted him, I've been willing to recommend £4 million he's worth. So these all these facts don't all happen, for a dud. So I happen to think he'll grow into his role as well. And again, it's good competition right now. We've got a guy coming for Spurs, 4 million Swedish centre half, 7 million French player Jullien, who's been at the club a couple of years, and then you've got Stephen Welsh, who I think's impressed almost all of us now.
Well, that's the big question now, isn't it? We're talking about the kind of squad management. But one thing that sticks in my mind, because I've been a big fan of Stephen Welsh since he came into the side. I think he came in at the very worst time, Amy, thrown into that game against Rangers. I know he had played a game before, and, it was just a disaster for the team that day. And for the youngster coming in, very, very difficult for him. And, playing alongside different players every week, it seemed last season, playing with 3 different goalkeepers behind him in one season, which is bizarre. Now and again, you might get the third choice getting a game here or there in the League Cup, but all 3 of the goalkeepers were first choice at one point last season. So it was completely unsettled. And you've got a guy who's trying to establish himself in the first team. However, I've got concerns that perhaps Ange Postecoglou doesn't rate him as a first pick. I mean, the first opportunity that he got to drop him, he did drop him this season, and that was obviously to bring in Nir Bitton. And I think, going to Tynecastle and making that change and bringing in Starfelt at the same time was just too much. It was a bridge too far. And it's going back to the point we made before, just throwing players together and saying, work it out. You really are taking a chance here. And I think I would have much preferred to have had Stephen Welsh at the heart of that defence. I mean, they came through some really tough times against Midtjylland. I know we lost the game over the tie over the 2 games, but I think Welsh equipped himself very, very well. But the first opportunity that Ange Postecoglou got, he dropped him. And I'm now looking at the situation where, right, we've got 2 centre halves due to come in. We've got a brand new signing who is, Boyce says, he comes with a bit of pedigree in Carter Vickers. We've then got potentially next month Jullien coming in, and I'm wondering if Stephen Welsh will be that fall guy. How do you think Ange will play that one, Amy?
It is really interesting because everything, well, obviously what you've outlined is just correct. We were all really shocked to see that Welsh was dropped. When he was partnered with Dane Murray, again, understand what unfolded, but I don't think neither of them were really at fault. I thought they were pretty resolute, and to be the experienced head alongside Dane Murray, who is now he's with the Colts and he's fell face of the earth for the first team, and he's down with the Colts in the Lowland League now. But Welsh, is undoubtedly brought him on leaps and bounds there because he was that experienced head. Now, that's a real quick turnaround, like you're saying, in the past 9 months for Welsh, but I think he's grabbed it with both hands. And I think it was really unjust that that obviously got dropped, and that's not a bold statement. I think everybody felt that. But if Jullien, when Jullien does come back, it has to be right now, you would say, in the place of Carl Starfelt. Welsh is undroppable. He's playing so well. He's got the confidence there, and I think he is, putting in performances that do deserve all the credit that he's getting. I think there was a few as well that perhaps he should have maybe got a senior Scotland call up. I'm not quite so sure on that yet. I'm actually more than happy. I'm just trotting away at Celtic right now. He's still in and out 21s, so I'm more than happy with that. But it's interesting as well to talk about Cameron Carter-Vickers, because you're looking at the comments coming in, and a lot of them are saying that he should come in for this weekend. I actually think that's a bit harsh. I've been a bit of a critique of Carl Starfelt, but I think in the last few games is actually where he's played his best Celtic performances. I thought his best was ultimately against Rangers. He obviously came on for Sweden at the weekend there, albeit I think it was against Uzbekistan. And I think I've read somewhere that he was a defensive mid actually for Sweden. I think that's who he came on. It was a late substitution. But it's all these different things that I think that it's, as we're talking about continuity and we're talking about, stability and looking forward, obviously, even to Europa League as well, I'd be keeping Starfelt in for now. He has £4 million, got to bide time with him. The performances maybe haven't been quite so quick up until the international break, but I think he's getting there. It's maybe took a little bit more time than Kyogo for example, but I think he deserves his place just for now.
I don't disagree with that. I think the game against Rangers showed everything that's good about Starfelt, which is the defensive side of it. Boy, should we like our players wherever they are in the park to thread passes. I mean, Jullien's very good at that. Stephen Welsh is very good at that. Or in Chris Ayer's case, the departed Chris Ayer, go for one of these 40, 50-yard galloping runs and be ball players. I think Starfelt's all about the defensive side of the game in terms of winning the ball. And we need that as well. So he's probably playing with a lot more of the ball at his feet than he's used to. I've got to say, his previous club, I wasn't a big fan of that club. I've not watched much of their games, so I don't know the style that they play. But Celtic, the defenders have always got the ball at their feet. He's maybe not that comfortable with the ball at his feet. I think it was something the same that could be said for Shane Duffy last season. He spent a lot of the time with the ball at his feet. It wasn't about winning the ball, winning headers. It was about, bringing the ball down and trying to pick out a pass. And he struggled, and a lot of defenders would struggle. Now, Joseph Tom comes in. Hey guys, before you go, thanks for a great show. I'm on holiday this week, so glad to see you live. Normally watch later after work. Joseph, welcome to the show. Get involved in the comments section. There is plenty to discuss, as always. Now, there is a point coming in here in relation to someone referred to Liam Scales the other day as perhaps the dark horse of the Celtic transfer window. I tend to think that James McCarthy could be the dark horse. He's almost just going to come in without a big fanfare. And when you think of past transfer windows, Amy, had we signed James McCarthy a couple of years back, it would have been a big fanfare. But because of injuries, he hasn't played as much as probably he would have liked. But you look at his career at the age of 30, he's played over 400 club games competitively, as well as 42 games for the Republic of Ireland. So it's not as though he's not played a lot of games. You do see a lot of players playing their entire careers, and they've only played 300 games. 250 games. It's bizarre. He's played a lot of football. In terms of fees, transfer fees, over £21 million he has cost football clubs in the past. He's now at Celtic. He's only 30. He can only play in the centre of midfield, I believe. How pivotal do you think he's going to be? Because I think because of the success, quite rightly said, in what you said earlier of Kyogo, a lot of the focus has gone on to him because he's been such an instant impact since he's came to Celtic. And McCarthy's been in the kind of background. He's only had a couple of appearances. Do you think that time will show him to be a very, very shrewd bit of business by Celtic?
He's a classic player, and anyone that's watched him over the years, even from his young days at Hamilton, know that. The injury is a concern, and the lack of his involvement and really his appearance really in benches has been a little bit of a worry, because I think that was really the downside to the transfer. Everyone was like, over the last few years, there was some crazy stats going about. I think it was in comparison to obviously Callum McGregor. However, whatever Callum McGregor's done in a season, I think it's took McCarthy 4 or 5 or something like that. It's crazy, sort of stats. But to be comparing them to McGregor's a bit harsh. I think anyone's stats compared to that's going to be a downfall. But he's going to be. Well, you've got to hope that he's going to be an asset. Like you say, the pedigree's there, the experience is certainly there, and for many, what they like to see is that he's a Celtic fan as well. So everything is sort of rearing and ready to go. Like I say, how many years have we been, linked to James McCarthy? It goes back as long as I can remember. So once he gets into that side, it'll be interesting to see what he can do. What his play, will he be informed Callum McGregor, or will he be able to play beside McGregor? And will that alter what McGregor actually does? Because we say McCarthy can play that a little bit deeper as well. So it'll be interesting. And it's another option to have, of course.
I've seen a lot of talk around the comment section and on social media that Celtic lack a bit of steel in the midfield positions. We've got a lot of good footballers, technical players, Russell, but we might lack a wee bit of steel. You see Sorrell coming in, he tries to do that, but he's quite erratic with his challenges, and he's always just, a moment away from a yellow card. Do you think McCarthy, and I know there's a lot more to James McCarthy's game, incidentally, than just adding a bit of steel to the midfield, do you think that's one of the elements that he could bring that we do lack in that area?
Yeah, I think you've just nailed it. Absolutely. I mean, when you Scott Brown, is such a key element of that side for so long. If once he leaves, that void has to be filled one way or the other, or like you say, there will be a considerable lack of steel, grit, whatever you want to call it, in the midfield. And I think that McCarthy was signed for his experience. I think he was the first example of Ange thinking, right, I might not be able just to play gung-ho every single match here in Scotland. It is a different sort of style here. I think it's unique, if I'm honest to you. And I think it does take a requirement to have sometimes players that are more about, doing the hard work of the game, the dirty side, the side to the game that doesn't really get much thanks. Also, I think that McCarthy will be a far better footballer than, some people might lazily tag him with. I think he's not coming in just to be a sitting midfielder who's going to be, just passing to players and say, oh, you go have the ball, you go play with it for us, I'll win it back. Yeah. I think when James McCarthy's got the ball at his feet, we might be in for a wee bit of a fright at his range of passing that he's got. And he's 30 years old. I mean, he's at the peak of his powers right now. You think when Henrik scored 53 goals, and I appreciate his different seasons, he turned 30, or he was 29, 30, but it's like, you look at that and you go, it's the right age, sometimes for players to come into their own. And this is the right challenge for McCarthy as well. The only concern I've got is he's obviously missed the last 2 squads. I mean, unless I've missed it, I don't really know of any update that we've had as to what the reasons behind that were.
He's the player I would start against Ross County. He's the new signing who I would start. I think he needs to, obviously, unless he's got some kind of underlying injury problem, I would get him the game time in a game like this. Interestingly, something I didn't say, and Jed Sweeney picks up on it, goal-scoring centre-backs are like hen's teeth, and we have one. On the point is Jullien, 61 appearances, 10 goals. That's a brilliant return for a centre-half, so that's a good point as well. And in relation to McCarthy, if he was to get games, you just need to look at the fact that Scales signs for Celtic and gets a call up to the Republic of Ireland full international squad. You would kind of think that maybe James McCarthy has those aspirations as well to get back into international football. So it might be good for him. You sometimes think that he's older, Russell, because I think he made his debut at 15. He was only 15, wasn't he, when he played for Giakoumakis? So he's been in and around first-team football for 15 years. So you tend to think of him as a 34, 35-year-old, but in actual fact, he is only 30. Now, there is also a lot of chat around about Georgios Giakoumakis, coming in, top goal scorer for his club, and indeed in the Dutch top division last season. His side, VVV, were relegated, but he still managed to get in amongst the goals. There is a concern, though, that it might just be like a one-season wonder style, hence the reason the transfer fee wasn't massive. And, there has been a lot of talk around about that. I do get the sense, Amy, that he's not being bought as the first choice striker, I've got to say. I do think he's come in because we've lost Edouard, we've lost Griffiths. Earlier on, we also lost Patrick Klimala. So we definitely, and Bayo, let's not forget. So we definitely needed to strengthen. I don't think that he might not even be considered to be above Albion Ajeti. So you've got Kyogo, who is the first choice and should always be playing through the centre. And we've spoken about the fact that he should have started against Rangers through the centre. I then look at Ajeti being the second choice in Giakoumakis. That might all change, of course, but that's the kind of view I have on this player, and I'm certainly not writing him off. What's your view on Giakoumakis? And is this the type of game you give him a run in?
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I definitely don't see him coming in, as a number one. And obviously the way that Celtic play or have played so far this season, it is just the one striker. And I don't really see us going to like a flat 4-4-2 anytime soon. Certainly not to just try and shoehorn into two strikers ultimately. So do I see him as third choice? I'd like to think that he can still, have a chance of being second choice and be the main backup to Kyogo, purely because I don't feel that Ajeti's anywhere near the frame. So if he's even behind Ajeti, then I feel that's slightly worrying because he's not shown a lot of confidence in him. Ajeti's had the odd few minutes. Was it against St Mirren? Obviously, I think he contributed to the goal. I think he broke down or was pressurising on the defender. But other than that, there's not been a lot of glimpses at goal or in any sort of team for him. So I'd like to think that he can come in because, money has been spent on him and being the number two. I think, you can look at it two ways. It can be like the odd season for Giakoumakis last season that all these goals were scored, top goal scorer in Eredivisie. I think 9 were penalties. And then if you look at his previous seasons, it's not all that impressive. So it's almost the odd season out of however many it may be. So you could say that it's that, and we're going out on a real limb here, or it could be that you might be catching him there's a little bit of confidence. He's finally hit that one season that he just really needed to break through, and from here we could kick on in. But it could be I think was it maybe Tony say that it could be a Stefan Spekovic. Remember when we signed him, I was quite young. We signed him, and so I can't remember the stats.
What do you mean you were quite young, Amy?
I can't remember what the stats were, but I'm sure he had an impressive season, didn't he? And then we got him, and then that was not the move that should have been made. So there's hope that it could start a spiral and it could go on to be a fantastic career. But I think there needs to be a little bit of caution, and we can't just all look at the glitzy numbers of last season, because if you look a little bit further back and do a little bit of the research, it's really has been so far just a one-season wonder.
That I guess is the only concern, and I know that obviously when he signed, the club pointed out he'd scored goals in various leagues. He's now coming to Scotland, and obviously there's the whole connection to Samaras, who he knows, who he's worked with. They were both born in Heraklion in Greece, so there's connections there, and I loved a bit of the old Georgios Samaras voice. But I do get the feeling that what we get out of him would almost be a bit of a bonus. If you're looking at a £2.5 million signing, it's a classic Celtic striker signing. We've done it so often in the past. But I just think, looking at what we've got ahead of him in Kyogo, is Ajeti ahead of him? I'm not too sure. It would be nice to see him getting some game time against Ross County so we can start making our mind up about him.
Well, I think as well, we're committing right now to it just generally being one up top, and I just feel at times at home, you look at the amount of chances we created. Was it 108 we got in 3 matches in a row?
Yeah,
108 opportunities. You have 2 strikers on the pitch, the goal conversion rate goes higher. And remember, we are going for 10-1 match this season. So the sooner they get 2 players playing up front together at home in the SPFL, the happier I'll be. So my comment doesn't look completely ridiculous. I think it might be. I would like to see a manager that that can be flexible with his formation. I don't
Yeah.
really want it just to be the same every single match. I think maybe, like you said, alluded to earlier, sitting midfielder at Ibrox in the mould of James McCarthy would have been ideal. We didn't have one because we couldn't really trust Sorrow on that occasion, which I kind of understand what you were meaning with that. And then why not be able to mix it up at home to Ross counties of the world, with no disrespect to them, but we took apart Dundee, we took apart St Mirren. I think Ross County are of a similar ilk, if not even slightly poorer than St Mirren. So I just feel that these sort of games, if you're going to create 36 chances, have 2 strikers on the pitch. See how many you can get. This season might come down to goal difference too. So whilst we jest, all right, about 10 goals maybe in one match and all that, the fact of the matter is, these home matches, if we're creating 36 chances, we need to be converting as many as possible, as I think this title race could be extremely, extremely closely fought, if that makes sense. But I think with Giakoumakis, what I like about his goal reel, though, from last season was the variety of goals. And yes, 9 were penalties out of 26. It was like 6 or 7 were headers. There was 2 outside of the boot dinks he did with his right foot to the far post that were almost identical, but took real skill to do them. And then there was a lot of tap-ins, being at the end of crosses, almost slide tackles for shots. I don't mind that. And it just feels like he's going to give a completely different option up there than anything Ayeti's offered so far, to be completely honest to you. And certainly gives a different option for Kyogo, because we know Kyogo's going to be about his runs off the ball, making defenders have to make tough decisions, dragging defenders about the pitch. And then obviously, we all know Kyogo's going to score some pearlers this season as well, because he's just got all the talent to do so. But Giakoumakis is an interesting one, I think. And if we want to be positive about it, at the end of the day, you'd rather get him on the back of being the top scorer in the Eredivisie than you would him being the top scorer 2-3 seasons ago in the Eredivisie. So, he's coming whilst, we're striking whilst the iron's hot with this one. And as I say, again, it's YouTube montages you watch, Paul, you know what I mean, and stuff. So I get all that. But the goals scored were all completely different. There were a lot of varying types of goal. It wasn't all just, I think at first we thought this was like it's maybe more of a target man sort of striker we're bringing in. Then you see all the different types of goals he scored, and you think, no, I think there's a lot more to him. The
good thing is, Russell, you're talking about positivity. Within that answer there that you've given, you've been talking about Celtic scoring 10 goals in one game. I love your positivity. Keep that up. Absolutely. Now, D. Kelleher comes in. I heard that Hazard came on and did well for Northern Ireland last night. Well, he did certainly come on. I think he got about half an hour of the game where Northern Ireland won 1-0 against Estonia. So he's an international footballer and he's our third choice goalie. And to be honest with you, and I know that he flapped a couple of times when he was in the first team, Amy, I thought he kind of got a hard time last season. And when we're looking at the goalkeeper situation, I think that's one of the things that has been kind of put to rest. I'm quite satisfied that we've got our number one in Joe Hart, but it raises the questions, and I've been reading into this also over the last few days around about our signing strategy. I mean, we knew that we needed a huge amount of players. We've gone and signed 12 players for the first team. A couple of them are probably going to be fringe players, the 2 boys from Sheffield Wednesday, for example. We'll see how Liam Scales does as well. But the question has been raised in relation to the manner in which we've done it, the strategy. So we know that Ange came in and we had already heard about the modernisation of the club from Dominic Mackay, the incoming CEO, but we had to concentrate on getting the personnel right on the park. So there was this huge recruitment drive before we could then start looking at directors of football, head of recruitments, the backroom team, not just the coaching side of it, but the sports science, the data analytics, etc., etc. And then the story broke that Dermot Desmond was going to be playing an active role in that. He was going to be getting involved in that. And although, certainly in real time, you never find out who's responsible for which signings, there is the suggestion that some of the bodies that have come in have been influenced by the man at the top, Dermot Desmond. Now, if the player that comes in is a Joe Hart and he does really, really well, or in past and years gone by, it's a Robbie Keane and he comes in and scores goals for fun, nobody cares how he was identified, who pushed for the deal, who influenced the deal. And I'm pretty sure the manager wouldn't really care about that either if the standard of that player is a Joe Hart or a Robbie Keane. If, for example, the signings don't go so well, though, then you start scrutinising that strategy. Is it a concern for you that, Dermot Desmond has had an involvement, and we can't say it was his influence that brought in this player or that, because no one's going to confirm that, as I say, in real time. Is it a concern for you, Amy, or was it a situation where it was needs must? We had to get all the influence we possibly could to get the bodies in the door.
No, because we spoke so much, just even like 6 months ago about the rebuild, and that it was a clear out overhaul. We used all these terms; they were all in the strap line, everything like that. So, like you say, we'll never be able to know, like, if it was Dermot Desmond who brought in, if it was Liam Shaw, or if it was Joe Hart, or if it was Kyogo Furuhashi, or Bill. To be honest, that's one we do know who brought that one in. But we're never going to know. But that doesn't necessarily make it right for me. I'd have much preferred that Dermot didn't really play any sort of part at all. That's not what he's here to do. He's not here to be part of football operations or whatever title they sort of pinned it to. And the overhaul, the rebuild, everything, it was the clean slate ultimately. Mm-hmm. And while Peter Lawwell's still influencing whatever he could or potentially be influencing, and if Dermot Desmond's still having a say in transfers, then I don't believe then that's the clean slate that we were all sort of promised and certainly hoping for. So it is a worrying sign, but if Dermot Desmond comes out and says, well, I signed Joe Hart, then it'll maybe be left to eat our words a little bit, but it's tough. Like I say, I wanted the clean slate, but that's evidently not been the case.
Do you think we could maybe argue the point as well that maybe Desmond stepped in because we were too slow in getting said director of football or head of recruitment in, and he realised this season isn't starting very well, and maybe he's went, I've got contacts here, I can help. And perhaps it wasn't maybe an ego thing. Maybe he just felt needs must here because we've not got our ducks in order, or whatever that saying is. I always forget that one. Ducks in a line, whatever it is. We've not got all that sorted right now, and we're relying on. Ange has already explained as well the difficulty of bringing in players from the J League in the summer window. It was maybe January would be a better opportunity for that. So whilst it was great he got Kyogo, he might have said, look, I can't. My hands are a bit tied here, and that's where Desmond's. He goes, who's the head of recruitment? Oh, we've still not got one. Director of football. I bet Ange said mate a few times when he was discussing that with him anyway, Paul. Because I think, it's ridiculous that we don't have a head of recruitment. And I think as well, when Ange is given his budget at times and he's told, right, that this is what we've got to spend on, in wages, etc. See, when you're seeing the likes of Bolingoli, Barkas, whoever else, taking up percentages of that, that's when you can go, you can't blame. I don't think Dermot Desmond can sell these guys. I don't think you'll have a list of people that just buys players off him as much as you might be able to source the odd player from leagues he may know or agents that they might have certain players like as clients or whatever. But the actual outgoings, you have to admit there is still some players in there that are costing us money. That if we had a recruitment strategy or someone at the top involved in all transfer negotiations, you'd like to think, albeit not for great fees, by the way, and I accept that now because their reputation, their profile has, is dwindled at Celtic. But you can't help but feel at least Bolingoli and Barkas could have been out the door, and that's, I don't know what we're talking here, £20,000 to £30,000, £20,000 to £35,000 a week saved up, which might be preventing Ange maybe from getting one of his players. We just don't know. I think it does highlight, though, that Ange had far too much to do himself this summer on his own. And, if Desmond stepped in, maybe it was actually because it was a needs-must exercise. And maybe it'll, obviously, you'll then be judged on what happens on the pitch, of course, whether it was the right call or not.
Yeah. The first thing I would say is between now and January, boys say it's a priority to line up deals for the likes of Bolingoli and Barkas simply because they are not contributing in any way, shape or form. So you've got to get them off the wage bill. So you've got to line up these deals. There might be other players in that category as well. I think the other one that was on everybody's list was Lee Griffiths. You had to get a deal. You had to get him out the door, and that happened. There might be other players who fall into that category, depending on how much Albion Ajeti plays and Giakoumakis plays. Ajeti might also come into that category. We need to get this player off the wage bill, either with a long-term loan deal with a view to a buyout, or we move them on for whatever fee we can get, because they are obviously they're not contributing, and that's the problem, because they're on a decent wage, they're not contributing, and there's other players in that squad, or we could replace them with as you say, one eye on the J League in January. Bringing this up for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because yes, we're on Twitch, so there we go. I do not care if Dermot O'Leary helped us get Joe Hart in. I think I was saying that if they turn out well, your whole perspective on the thing is different. And so if he does well, and one thing I would say, we don't need 4 goalkeepers. We don't need 4 first team goalkeepers in that squad. So we need to get Barkas moved on. There is a differing view in relation to Conor Hazard within the comment section, and I've seen that ever since he broke in. Some people reckon he's a decent prospect, others disagree. The thing about Hazard, he was given a bumper deal after the quadruple treble was wrapped up. Was it a 4-year contract? He signed a brand new contract that week. So I don't think he's going to be offloaded. He might go out on loan to get him game time. He's an international footballer. He maybe wants to remain in the international kind of scene, and in order to do that, he needs to get games. So that for me, it's definitely a question, because the Ange Postecoglou situation, I think there was a lot of these needs-must situations with Ange, because it was all last minute, and that's certainly one of them. And we know it does happen. I mean, we've heard it from the horse's mouth with Paddy McCourt. Paddy McCourt told us that Dermot Desmond signed him, and Strachan didn't even know who he was when he turned up for training. You know what I mean? And obviously it took Paddy a wee while to get fit, and he had to play in the reserves, as it was then, to get the fitness before he was introduced to the first team. He ended up playing quite a bit of football for Gordon Strachan, one season in particular, but he certainly had no bearing in Paddy McCourt coming to Celtic Football Club. The other question I would ask around Ange, because it is something he spoke about, Amy, was the backroom team. It seems to me, though, that the focus that was on the coaching staff last season is diminished a bit. I mean, we're not talking about Kennedy that often, or Woods, or Strachan. It's something that we're not really focusing on a lot, but I'd still think that comments he made fairly recently would suggest he still wants new staff in relation to the data analysis and the football science. Is that something that you see as a priority between now and January as well? Because Ange has obviously been given these assurances when he's taken the job.
If it's a priority for Ange, and if it was promised to him, then absolutely. Like you say, it really has quietened down. And I think that's for the good of the club, for the good of Ange, and for the good of certainly both Kennedy and Strachan. But if Ange was promised that he would get to sign staff, and obviously he's came out and his comments at the time certainly suggested that, then yes, it is a priority. We can all have our own views on it, but if the man in charge has been promised that, then we absolutely have to go by that, and the club and whoever it may be must abide to that. You've got to give him what he wants, and I think we've suggested this for a few weeks now. He's more than earned. No matter what happened against Rangers, he has earned, in getting into Europa League especially, his weight in gold. So whatever decision he wants, just give it to him. Certainly right now, and when it comes to staff, that's a real game changer, and it could potentially be a real game changer for him. He's came in, look what he's managed to do, and while he's been handed these staff who had no idea about. We're talking about obviously Strachan getting handed McCourt, who didn't know who he was. Ange has been handed, Kennedy and Strachan, who he certainly wouldn't have known on a personal level all too well. So just think what he could do with the right men behind him, with men who obviously share the same philosophy as him, or whatever it may be, playing style, same approach. I think that's a really exciting time, and we try and always, talk about right players can maybe influence and improve systems and improve Ange ball. Well, so can the men behind the scenes. So I think that's why it's absolutely crucial that certainly if Ange still wants, his own staff in, then that he gets his staff in.
I think
Amy's right. I think Amy's right. And I just think as well, I suppose when you look at the goal that we did concede against Rangers, that is glaringly similar, to goals that we were conceding last season. So the problem can remain. And there's a wee thing as well with the backroom staff for me that's happened. I mean, John Kennedy is now banded alongside Strachan as Kennedy and Strachan. Have you noticed that? And yet he used to be talked up as potential Hibs St Mirren manager in the running for those jobs. He's now actually, his stock's fallen. No two ways after last season. And I do think as well that if results were to still be a mixed bag, and let's be honest, it's been a mixed bag so far, some extremely high moments and some fantastic, obviously getting past AZ was, to me a real highlight because I felt that was a tricky obstacle. But there's been some downsides as well. And if it continues to be a mixed bag, not saying it will, just in case it does, I think there will be more scrutiny on, why isn't Ange got anyone in his backroom team backing him? And I wonder if it will go to, well, have you been strong enough in requesting it? Remember, like Ange said about player recruitment, perhaps I haven't been getting my message across enough. Or are you quite happy with what we've got? And in that case, he would then need to take responsibility for it. I would like to think Ange will get someone to support him in there and take the sting off him as well, because at times you can't help but feel it must be quite isolating, Paul, when you're doing the job on your own without your right-hand man beside you, someone that's your go-to, not necessarily the club's go-to, your go-to. Just that bit of support can be helpful. Sometimes, a lot of assistant managers, I think, come in and they're quite good at doing the good cop, bad cop sort of thing as well. I think a lot of that goes on, and you wonder if Ange has built relations enough yet with Kennedy and Strachan, the banded together again there. But you wonder if he's built up strong enough relationship with them yet to sort of be achieving that sort of dynamic in the dressing room. I would feel quite isolated if I was Ange right now, and I do hope he brings in someone to help him.
Well, it's about this culture that is going to be implemented, with a new guy coming in. If he wants to implement that and he's got like-minded people in his team, that's going to be a lot easier for him to implement it. So I think it is important. Now, we will also remind everybody to subscribe to A Celtic State of Mind. Get onto the YouTube channel, get subscribing. We're giving away gifts, free gifts. You're in a prize draw. We're giving them away on a regular basis. I'll have a couple of the jerseys on the mannequins next time we're on tomorrow at 12:30, because I will be back on tomorrow at 12:30. And I will be joined tomorrow by the Lawrence Conley and also Brian Degnan. So join us at 12:30. And also, get voting for us. We're up for 3 awards. And thanks to all you guys for tuning in. Obviously, we have been nominated for 3 national awards. Some of us will be going down to London and getting the party frocks and all that on, Amy. I'll probably wear a suit. I'll be probably wearing a suit. Anyway, it will be a good night down in London, and it'd be brilliant to bring something back up the road. But we're up for a treble. We're up for a treble of awards, which is rather astonishing. So please get voting for us. I'll leave all the details on the socials. I've got to thank Russell Boyce and Amy Canavan once again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind, and thanks everybody for getting involved in the comments. I'll see you again tomorrow at 12:30.